J.D. Vance pushed through the creaky door of the roadside diner, the bell above jingling sharply in the quiet. The air hit him first, thick with the scent of frying grease, burnt coffee, and something faintly sour, like old cigarette smoke baked into the walls. His wife, Usha, stepped in behind him, her hand clasped around their son Ethan's wrist as he dragged his sneakers across the threshold. Their daughter Lila clung to J.D.'s jacket, her small fingers twisting the fabric as she peeked around his leg. The diner was a time capsule, scuffed wooden floors, countertops slick with years of spills, booths patched with duct tape, and a radio in the corner crackling with a twangy country tune. The road keeps rolling on and on. But the atmosphere wasn't nostalgic. It was heavy, charged, like a storm brewing just out of sight. J.D. scanned the room, his jaw tightening as he caught the eyes watching them. Some flicked away fast, others lingered, curious, wary, or outright cold. He gestured toward a booth in the corner, its vinyl seats cracked but empty. "Over there," he said, his voice low but steady. Usha nodded, guiding Ethan forward while Lila shuffled close, her wide eyes darting between the strangers. The family settled in, the booth groaning under their weight. Ethan slumped dramatically, arms flopping onto the table. "I'm so hungry I could eat the table," he whined, kicking the metal leg with a dull thunk. Usha hushed him, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," she said, her tone dry but tired. J.D. gave her a faint smile, then turned his attention back to the room. At the counter, an older man sat hunched over a plate of runny eggs, his gray stubble catching the dim light. His flannel shirt was frayed at the cuffs, his hands rough and knotted from a lifetime of work. He didn't look up, but J.D. could feel the man's sidelong glance, sharp as a blade. Across the diner, a younger guy, mid-30s maybe, lounged in a booth, his arms crossed over a faded hoodie, a smirk tugging at his lips. The woman next to him fiddled with her phone, her nails tapping the screen, but her eyes kept darting toward J.D., quick and nervous. Behind the counter, a waitress, her name tag read Ashley, stood frozen, a coffee pot trembling slightly in her grip. She stared at J.D. for a beat too long, then dropped her gaze to the floor. J.D. cleared his throat, raising his voice just enough to carry. "Hey, could we get some menus over here?" Ashley flinched, her shoulders hunching as if he'd shouted. She turned slowly, muttering, "1 second," before vanishing behind the counter. But seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. Usha leaned closer, her voice a whisper. "Something's not right, is it?" J.D. shrugged, keeping his expression neutral. "Let's find out." When Ashley reappeared, her hands were empty, no menus, no apology. She shifted her weight, staring at a spot on the floor like it held the answers. We can't serve you," she said, her words barely audible. J.D.'s brow creased, but his tone stayed even. "Why's that?" Ashley swallowed, her fingers twisting the edge of her apron. "Boss said so." Usha sat up straighter, her voice cutting through the haze. "We've been driving all day with kids. We just need food. Then we're gone." Her words were firm, a mother's plea laced with steel. Ashley shook her head, helpless. "I'm sorry, I can't." The old man at the counter set his fork down with a clink, his voice gravelly but deliberate. "Folks round here don't all roll out the welcome mat for you, Senator." The younger guy, Matt J.D., caught later when Ashley called his name, snickered, leaning forward. "Yeah, some of us like our meals without a side of politics." The woman beside him stifled a laugh, but it came out shaky, like she wasn't sure she meant it. J.D. exhaled slowly, his hands flattening on the table. He glanced at his family, Ethan's pout deepening, Lila now half hidden behind Usha's arm. The weight of the moment pressed on him. He could walk out, dust off the insult, and find another spot. He could raise hell, demand answers, let them know exactly who they were turning away. He'd faced worse, hostile crowds, loaded interviews, debates where every word was a trap. But this was different. This was a diner, a simple stop on a family trip, and his kids were watching. He made his choice. "I'd like to speak to the boss," he said, locking eyes with Ashley. She hesitated, her lips parting as if to argue, then nodded and slipped through a swinging door toward the kitchen. Usha touched his sleeve, her voice low. "Is this worth it? We could just go." J.D. turned to her, his eyes softening. "I need to know why, and the kids deserve a meal." Ethan piped up, his voice small but insistent. "Dad, why don't they like us?" J.D. crouched slightly, meeting his son's gaze. "It's not about us, buddy. Sometimes people disagree with what I do, but we'll sort it out, all right?" Ethan nodded, though his frown didn't budge. Lila peeked out, whispering, "Are they mad at you, Daddy?" J.D. forced a smile. "Maybe a little, but we're okay." The kitchen door banged open, and a man strode out. Don, his name stitched in faded thread on a grease-smeared apron. He was broad-shouldered, thick-armed, his face carved with lines of hard living. His arms stayed crossed, his stare unyielding. "What's the issue?" he barked, his tone daring J.D. to push back. J.D. stood, meeting Don's gaze head-on. "My family wants to eat, but you're saying no. I'd like to know why." Don's eyes narrowed, his jaw shifting. "This is my place. I don't want you here. End of story." J.D. tilted his head, his voice steady as stone. "Your place, your call, but I've got a right to ask why." Don blinked, thrown off by the calm. He'd expected a fight, maybe a tantrum, something to justify kicking them out. Hank, the old man at the counter, broke the silence. "Kids look half-starved. Ain't right to send 'em off like that." Don shot him a glare. "Stay out of it, Hank." But his voice wavered, just a hair. Matt snorted from his booth. "Let 'em leave. They don't fit here." His girlfriend nudged him, hissing, "Hush, you're making it worse." J.D. sat back down, turning to his kids. "Hang tight, okay? We're working on it." Then he faced Don again, his tone unwavering. "I'm not here to cause trouble. We're tired. We're hungry. My boy wants a burger. My girl wants fries. That's it. What's the harm?" Don's jaw clenched, his fingers tapping his arm. He looked at the kids, Ethan staring wide-eyed, Lila clutching Usha's sleeve, and something shifted. He sighed, a rough, reluctant sound. "Ashley, menus, now!" A murmur rippled through the diner. Matt huffed, but his smirk faded. Ashley scurried over, 4 menus in hand, setting them down with a quick, apologetic glance at Usha. Usha opened hers, her voice softening. "What do you guys want?" Lila's face lit up. "Fries," Ethan grinned, bouncing slightly. "Burger with cheese," J.D. chuckled, the sound easing the knot in his chest. "Guess that's settled. I'll take a chicken sandwich. Usha?" She scanned the menu. "Same?" Don lingered, arms still crossed, watching. J.D. met his eyes. "Appreciate it." Don shrugged, gruff. "Eat quick, then get out." But his tone had lost its bite, and his gaze flickered with something like doubt. Ashley called the order back. 2 cheeseburgers, fries, 2 chicken sandwiches." and the diner began to breathe again. Forks scraped plates, coffee cups clinked, voices murmured, but the stares didn't stop. Hank wiped his mouth, nodding at J.D. "You pass through here much, Senator?" J.D. sipped his coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. "Now and then. Keeps me grounded getting out with them." He jerked his head toward his family. Hank grunted. "Good. But these parts are tough. Not everyone's your friend." J.D. smirked faintly. "Don't expect 'em to be." Matt shifted in his booth, his arms still crossed, but the cockiness was gone. His girlfriend whispered, "They overplayed it?" Matt shrugged. "Didn't think he'd stay. Guy's got guts, I'll give him that." She nodded, stealing another glance at J.D. The food arrived, steam rising from the plates. Ethan attacked his burger, ketchup smearing his cheeks. Lila giggled, passing fries to Usha, who smiled for the first time in hours. J.D. bit into his sandwich, crisp, savory, better than he'd expected. "Not bad at all," he said, nodding at Ashley. She hovered with the coffee pot. "More?" J.D. slid his cup over. "Yeah, thanks," Usha followed. "Me too." Ashley poured, her hands steadier now. Hank leaned back, studying J.D. "Keeping cool like that takes practice, huh?" J.D. laughed softly. "Years of it. Trickier with kids, though." Hank nodded, sage-like. "Kids turn everything upside down." Lila beamed, her mouth full. "Daddy, these fries are the best." J.D. ruffled her hair. "Good deal. Sneak me one." She giggled, holding out a fry, and he took it with mock ceremony. The diner's edge dulled, though it didn't disappear. Matt and his girlfriend paid up and slipped out, throwing one last look J.D.'s way, less hostile, more curious. Hank finished his eggs, tugged his cap on, and stood. "Smart move, sticking it out for the little ones," he said, tipping his head. J.D. smiled. "They're worth it." Don emerged from the kitchen, leaning against the counter, his arms crossed but looser now. He watched J.D., his frown deepening, like he was wrestling with something. The plates emptied, Ethan licking his fingers, Lila yawning, Usha stacking napkins. J.D. signaled Don. "Check?" Don ambled over, dropping a crumpled receipt. "Burgers hit the spot, huh?" J.D. grinned. "Damn right they did." He pulled out his wallet, slid cash across, more than enough, with a tip that made Ashley's eyes widen as she cleared the table. The family stood, the booth creaking in relief. Lila tugged J.D.'s sleeve. "Can we come back, Daddy?" He smirked. "Maybe someday." Usha gathered her bag, herding the kids. "Car time, you two!" The bell jingled as they stepped into the cooling dusk. Don muttered, "Drive safe," his voice rough but not unkind. J.D. dipped his head. "Will do, thanks." Outside, the sky had turned a deep bruise purple, the air sharp with the promise of night. Ethan kicked a pebble across the gravel lot. "Dad, why'd they hate us at first?" J.D. paused, crouching to his level. "They didn't hate us, Ethan. They just didn't know us. Sometimes folks need a minute to figure things out. We gave 'em that minute." Ethan frowned, processing. "And then they gave us food?" J.D. nodded. "Yeah, talking helps. Listening helps more." Usha caught his eye, her lips curving slightly. "You're good at this, you know." He shrugged, standing. "Practice." The car hummed to life, headlights carving through the dark. The diner shrank in the rear view, its neon sign, Don's Place, flickering faintly. Inside, the sounds picked up, clinking dishes, low voices, that old radio crooning on. Not everyone in there liked J.D. Vance. Some probably never would. But that night, in that stubborn little nowhere town, something cracked open. Not wide, not permanent, but enough. Enough for a meal, a moment, a quiet win.